Great. Very pleased to introduce M3 Mining to the investment community by the Share Cafe facility, and very happy to be here. We can move straight through the disclaimer slide that we put a lot of effort in that no one reads. Look, I'll talk to each of these points a little bit more, but I consider at the moment M3 to be in a very strong position with gold coming back into vogue following our recent success at El Capitan at the Argentina Gold Project. We're in the premier mining district of around Kalgoorlie, and we think we're onto something pretty spectacular out at El Capitan, and there's some more results to come in the not too distant future from a recent program together with other targets to be tested. We've still got a bit of a sleeping potential at Victoria Bore. The base metal thesis there remains alive. It needs a bit of work. And I think the team that I've got around me have got a enviable track record of unlocking the value of these kinds of assets, both Argentina and Victoria Bore, but together with acquisitions alongside of that. At the moment, we're very cheap and we're well funded, so I think it's a very interesting time for the company, and for those looking at us for the first time, I think it's worthwhile having a bit of a squeeze. Next slide, please. We've been around since July 21. We're pretty tightly held. Obviously, the management speaks for a good portion of the register, and the recent uptick you've seen is a result of the success at El Capitan in particular, and we are fairly confident that's going to continue. As I said a minute ago, we remain well funded for the existing programs coming up, and I do think that there's going to be some fairly significant catalysts vis-a-vis El Capitan, but also some acquisitions. Next slide, please. Just following on, I suppose, from what Adrian said a minute ago about your team, these companies only are as good as people around you, and I consider myself very fortunate and lucky with each of these individuals' involvement in M3. The demonstration of value creation by Ziggy and Russell is well known with Gold Road and the discovery of Gruyere. There's still people out there that refer to us in forums talking about the dividends that they're getting from remaining in and with Gold Road following the development and now operation of Gruyere, which is probably one of the more significant gold discoveries, and it's turned into a very significant production story in recent times. Eddie King is very active in the space, in the junior space, and has a great reputation of creating value by mergers and acquisitions in particular, but also as a very enviable reputation in the corporate finance space. Ben Donovan equally is a quasi-director, and with his knowledge and background in the ASX, we can navigate almost any situation and have done so. And he's a very valued member of the team. Austin Gow is a young geo that's one to watch. He's largely responsible for our recent success by pushing through when others would have quite happily packed their bags and come home. And Chris Newman's reputation as well. I mean, he's created many mines, built many mines, and has got quite a stellar career and demonstrated his ability to turn mines from an exploration concept into an actual operating, producing gold mine. So in Australia and as well as overseas. Next slide, please. So Argentina Gold Project, we are in the premier gold jurisdiction in the world, and I think we're surrounded by some pretty significant players, namely Northern Star, but also we've got Solstice around us, as well as Nexus and a few other people or companies that are well known to each other. We have got around about 320 square Ks out in and around Argentina. It's not all contiguous, but it's starting to be contiguous with some of the applications that we've got out there. We are mainly focused on the Keith Kilkenny tectonic zone, and this zone in particular hosts some pretty significant deposits, probably most notably the Caruso Dam project, which has got, I think, just over 4 million ounces now in resources. Unbelievably, Russell and Ziggy had this ground before it came into M3, and the reason they picked it up was the lack of exploration and work that had been done in and around the tenements that comprise the Argentina project. and it's been very shallow and it's been very sparse. And there's quite a significant number of targets that have been, I suppose, identified but haven't been followed up with. So we think that the El Capitan prospect is just a result of following up on some of those soil anomalies, giving Austin and the team a bit of time and resources to go out there and test those anomalies. And with further soil testing to be done, we think there's going to be some more anomalies that we can uncover and get out and further test not only El Capitan, which we think we've got nearly 2 Ks worth of strike at El Capitan. We've also got other prospects to the south as well as to the west at Jump Up. Next slide, please. So this is what everyone's talking about at the moment. I think we were quite excited when the first round of 4-metre composites came back from the El Capitan Air Core drilling program in May. I suppose we don't have it up on the slide there, but the initial result on the 4-metre composite was 4 metres at 13.5 grams. And on subsequent retesting on 2 occasions, the next test came back at 309, and the following test is nearly 640 grams per tonne. So we realised we were into a fairly significant potential prospect, and obviously we're very keen to follow it up, which I'll come to in a minute. But suffice to say, we rushed out to site and collected the 1 metre samples and resubmitted them to see if we can get a bit more of an idea about how high grade the El Capitan project could be. And the results spoke for themselves. I think, 10 metres at 241 grams with the headline number being 2,300 grams per tonne is going to get anyone's attention, but to follow it through for the following 9 metres beyond that very high hit gives us some confidence there's a bit of continuity to the grade and a bit of strength to this prospect. I think we're very encouraged and went basically straight out to site or organised a rig to get straight out to site, and we've since arranged some further work to be done as well. Went out to site to do some further AC drilling, and we're doing some further work as well. But to get these kind of nuggets and coarse gold in air core drilling is very unusual, and it really speaks to the tenor of the grade and the style of mineralisation that we are looking at here. Next slide, please. So this gives you a bit of an idea of the potential, and I was talking before around the soil anomalies. You can really see more to the south, but also slightly to the north. You can see the anomalies that were the indicators, for want of a better word, of where to drill these latest AC programs and the AC program that we've just completed. It was done very rapidly. Austin got a contractor and the required resources out there very smartly to continue to do some drilling north and south of the discovery hole. It was pretty quick drilling. It was nearly 74 holes, nearly 3,200 metres, and we went quite a way south. And obviously we're quite keen on getting the results from this air core program. We are quite comfortable that with some of the mineralisation we saw that we'll be back out there again. But probably most importantly for us, it's not just about El Capitan now. With these results, we're thinking that we need to go back to Jump Up, which is just to the west of El Capitan, and run the air core rig maybe in a slightly different manner, or follow up with some deeper RC drilling. It's typical style gold mineralisation in this area. It's shear zone related, associated with some quartz veining, which is fairly typical in this area along this Keith-Kilkenny tectonic zone, and again very similar to some deposits that are further to the south and not too far from us. I suppose the Ilganji Queen private mine just to the east is a good example again of this style of mineralisation. So I think we've got a fair bit of potential here, and we're going to move as quickly as we possibly can. Next slide, please. The Victoria Bore Copper Project. We probably should call it the Victoria Bore Base Metals Project. It's quite an interesting project out there in the kind of the southern part of the Pilbara. We are surrounded by FMG and Wyloo, effectively, well, all country forest related companies, but we've got pretty incredible infrastructure, and it's a busy area, but surprisingly it's had very little exploration work on it. It really is quite a green exploration project, despite some of the historic readings for copper that we got from the old Victoria Ball copper mine. It is, again, quite a large land holding. It's about 340 square kilometres. That's including ungranted as well as, or under application as well as granted tenements. But I think we will take a little bit more time on this one, following a litho structural interpretation that was done by an independent group, and come back and have a look at this one when time permits. We'll put more of our resources for the time being into El Capitan. But suffice to say, the limited nature of exploration presents numerous opportunities, and we are quite keen on getting out there and really doing some very grassroots exploration work, actually, which I'll talk to on the next slide, if you don't mind. So there's 9 areas that we can see that are highlighted on this slide that were focused on by this interpretation work that was done earlier. And we are quite keen on getting out there to, I suppose, run the ruler over it ahead of a follow-up program in due course. The areas that are yet to be granted is in the southeast, and as you can see on this this picture here, you can see that most of the interesting areas are to the southeast on this prospect. So we're quite keen to follow up with that some field work, and then once the other tenements are granted, we'll get going a little bit faster to the southeast. Next slide, please. This is a bit of a news flow to come. I mean, really, it is around El Capitan at Edudina. As I said, the drone mag surveys in motion, and the air core program, subject to some approvals, will get going, and then the deeper drilling, subject to results, hopefully later this year, assuming we get the appropriate approvals. We'll get out to Vic Bore soon and do this initial exploration work, and any drilling from that will really be derived by results, but the focus for the moment really remains on El Capitan. Next slide, please. So I suppose the investment thesis really, as I said before, surrounded by guys that have done this before and have demonstrated a track record of driving significant value right across the team, frankly. I consider myself very fortunate, and indeed shareholders should as well. We're in pretty safe hands with the likes of the guys on the board and that are helping manage these projects. El Capitan's very exciting. There's no other way to say it. I think getting that kind of tenor of grade, the kind of sniffs that we're getting to the north and the south, makes it a very juicy target for us, and we'll be putting a fair bit of effort and resources into that. We're pretty active out there. We've got some more news flow coming in the next quarter, and certainly subsequently, and assuming the RC results, or the deeper drilling in particular, comes off, then we will be obviously in the market considerably. And given our structure and the nature of our people around me, we are still very much in the acquisition hunt, given our only sub 50 million shares out, well-funded, very supportive shareholder base, and looking for us to do something fairly value accretive. And really, as I mentioned, we've got more than enough money in the tin to continue the work that we're doing. We're very cheap, in my view, at the moment, and gives shareholders a very unique opportunity to get in at pretty much the ground floor and watch what happens from here. I think that's it, Paul.
Thanks, Simon. Well, we've got a very interactive audience today, so plenty of questions. Let's kick off. In relation to the drone mag at El Capitan, can you give us an update on the timing of the survey and the following results?
Well, I've just got off the phone to Austin this morning, and the group has mobilised the site, and I'm subject to weather. They can't do it in too much wind, apparently. They should be commencing today or tomorrow. And as for the results, it's pretty quick. We imagine we'll get something out to market in mid-August. I thought it's reasonably fast turnaround for the drone mag, which is great, and it will be a very good indicator of this follow-up drilling program as well. I think it's going to give us a fair few indicators of where we need to go.
Yeah, there's next one was, when do you expect to receive the AC drilling results from the recent follow-up program at El Capitan?
Well, as I think we announced the samples are at the lab pretty quick after we completed the AC program, the second program at El Capitan, and subject to the lab's load, I suppose. We're anticipating to get the results late August, hopefully a little bit sooner. But obviously, a fair bit of work will flow from getting those results around late August.
Yeah, and then subject to those results, what's the timing for the next round of drilling at El Capitan?
For the air core program, if there was to be a follow-up air core program, we're pretty much ready to go, subject to getting the requisite approvals, particularly noting the recent changes over here in WA. I think we just need to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's with that. But in relation to RC, we've got all the applications in place. We have made the necessary inquiries in order to get the green light to get out to do some RC drilling. And again, once we get some results and the approvals in place, the green light from the necessary authorities, then we'll be hopefully getting out to do some RC drilling later this year.
And I'm going to ask you a question. You mentioned about acquisitions. Can you give us any info on the nature of the acquisitions that you're potentially considering?
Yeah, well, we've looked at quite a few, but we've become quite discerning at what we will consider, and we'll get into the due diligence. A lot of people have thrown projects at us that have unrealistic price expectations and don't really offer much value. But at the moment, we've got 2 gold projects, both in Australia, that we're getting quite keen on, and Chris and Austin are getting a bit of information on at the moment. But a third is an international project in the energy space, and we are, I suppose, early stages there. No terms have been discussed for each of them, but suffice to say that each of them are fairly significant, will be significant acquisitions for M3. And I think if I was to fortune tell, I'd say that there'd be some corporate manoeuvring and or transactions down the track if we're successful on any of them, frankly. I think they're of that nature.
Okay. And there's one here, final question for you, Simon. You've also had some interesting results at the Victoria Bore project and what looks like a potential graphite mineralisation opportunity. What is the latest test work being done? Is there potential for an economic graphite concentrate to be produced?
We're still working on that. It's a bit of a slow burn at the moment. It was I suppose the nature and the grade and the thickness was a little bit unexpected from the RC drilling that's been referred to in that question late last year. Graphite is very much required in this new EV world, but I think we're going to probably wait for some further results in the testing to make sure it's amenable to the space. But certainly the thickness and the grade, if this graphite shear extends all the way to the south of the previous holes, as we think it does, is worthy of some further work. And we're doing some analysis at the moment on the flake size, as I understand it, with the graphite and the mineralisation to make sure that it's amenable to being developed further.
Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today, and we'd love to get you back on later in the year. Have a great weekend.
Great. Thank you very much. Cheers, Paul.
Thanks, buddy.